It's here. Let's get the lineups right. And of course, I do want to go through real quick. Look at all the updated injury news that we have as of 5:11 Central Time on Thursday. Evans, Bucky Irving, neither practice on Thursday. I'm a lot more concerned about Bucky than I am Mike Evans. Ladd McConkey gets in a limited practice today. I would assume that Ladd honestly is good to go for this weekend, but of course, that is not a guarantee. Aiden O'Connell doesn't practice on Thursday. I would be surprised if Aiden O'Connell played. George Pickens doesn't practice again Thursday. I don't think you're going to have Pickens this week. Tony Pollard doesn't practice again Thursday. Friday practice is going to be massive with Pollard here. Breece Hall doesn't practice again on Thursday. So if you're looking at Breece, keep in mind, this is a team that has absolutely nothing to play for, right? They really aren't incentivized to go through and push Breece Hall out there for a meaningless game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it does look like this may be another contest in which Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis do split the backfield. Cedric Tillman gets in a limited practice. I bet you have Tillman going against the Chiefs this week. David Njoku doesn't practice Thursday. Obviously, this will be a big thing to monitor on Friday. Kamara doesn't practice again Thursday. Big thing to monitor on Friday. Evan Ingram doesn't practice on Thursday. Big thing to monitor on Friday. Josh Downs may actually be good to go this week. So I actually do think we need to move Downs up our ranks. Tough matchup going up against Denver, however. Xavier Legette likely to undergo surgery to repair ligaments in his wrist after the season. I will say in your regular redraft league, obviously Legette's not going to make any difference whatsoever. Y'all know I am just all underdog all the freaking time. I have a total of 75 teams advance to the playoffs out of what tournaments? This is the Mastiff, Big Dog, Chow Chow, Best Ball Mania, Rottweiler, Pitbull, Pug 2, Golden 2, the Flock Contest, the Dachshund, a bunch. I mean, I have 34 teams in Best Ball Mania. I think I advanced almost 40 teams in the sprint. And looking at this, I actually have a decent amount of Panthers. Of my remaining teams, I have 21% Chuba Hubbard, 12% Xavier Legette, and 10% Adam Thielen. So your boy's really rooting for Legette to possibly have a spike week for underdog purposes. And your regular redraft league could not care less, though. You're never starting this dude regardless. Bills have to verge. It doesn't matter. Does not matter. DeAndre Swift listed as did not participate in practice on Thursday. So it didn't really practice at all last week. He gets in the limited on Friday. Then he was good to go in the weekend. So will be something to look at. Isaac Garindo should be playing tonight. So with Garindo playing tonight, I don't necessarily know how much you trust him. But we'll get official word in what? I want to say 30 minutes or so on if he is active or inactive. And of course, I will let you know as soon as we get that word. But let's go through and let's answer all the start-sit questions and everything that we have. I understand we didn't live stream last night, didn't answer the questions then. But once we get to this point of the year where nobody's really making trades, I'm going to try to stick my live streams to really the most optimal times that I can try to give you the best answers, such as Thursday before the Thursday night games, probably Saturday night, Sunday morning when we have all the information, and then of course a Tuesday night when we go through and do the recap of what happened the week prior. So I think maybe Wednesdays from now on, just because there's going to be so much up in the air when it comes to injuries. Probably not a night I'll be streaming and answering start-sit questions, just because I'm obviously just trying to help out the best I can. But let's look at this from Ogaro says, high ceiling flex. Are we going to go with Wilson against the Jags, McConkey versus Tampa, both great matchups, or White versus the Chargers? Opponent has Darnold, Chase, Kupp, Mixon, Jacobs, and Montgomery. So this is the rest of the lineup. Yeah, our opponent is very good. We'll get a sense of what the matchup's like after tonight with what Kupp does for him. If you have no Bucky Irving, I really want to say that Rachaad White probably turns into a must-start running back. Now, of course, with that being said, it is a really tough matchup going up against the Los Angeles Chargers here. And I would imagine you actually do get some Sean Tucker involvement. So it's not like Bucky is going to be White would be a true 3-down bell cow. But you would be in a spot in which, I don't know, you get the majority of the work in a decent offense. You have receiving usage and usage at the goal line. So I would say Rachaad White, probably somebody that you have to play if you have no Bucky Irving. And then looking at Wilson versus Ladd McConkey, if Bucky does play, I think you probably end up going with Ladd if Ladd gets cleared tomorrow. And if not, you go with Wilson. But both Ladd and Wilson have great matchups. Now, if you're starting Justin Herbert, though, in a good spot against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you are truly looking for the highest ceiling possible, you could make a very compelling argument to just get the stack in there with Ladd. But Mr. Filthy Wubs, always happy to see us, says Week 17 Saints versus the Raiders or the Colts defense versus the Giants. I'm actually thinking I would prefer the Colts defense against the Giants. If you're looking at the Giants offense this week, obviously a lot of this has to do with the fact that they have a pretty tough matchup against Baltimore here. But the second lowest implied team total that you have for any team in the NFL right now this week is about 18 points. And the implied team total that you have specifically for the New York Giants is 13.5. The Giants are not only supposed to be the worst offense in the NFL this week, they are supposed to be the worst offense in the NFL by a wide margin. It's a team that has completely collapsed. It's arguably the biggest dumpster fire in the NFL right at this second. So I think I'd probably prefer to have the Colts going up against the Giants if we're looking at defenses. But Hakuna Kamara says, fantasy rookie here. Thanks for the great content. Week 15-16, first round for the playoffs. Panic on no quarterback and A.J. Brown. Do you mean the New Orleans quarterback here in terms of, having Alvin Kamara as your RB? So with A.J. Brown, in terms of quote-unquote panicking, I still think that this is one of the most efficient receivers in the NFL. The fundamental issue that you have is Philly's just simply not throwing the ball a ton. I mean, they are one of the most run-heavy offenses you are going to see in the league. This matchup against Pittsburgh, where you actually do have the spread in this game only being about 5 points, may be one in which you actually do see the Eagles forced to throw the ball a bit. So I think A.J. Brown's in a decent spot. Obviously, I'm going to start Puka Nacua over him, however. Going down to the flex, I think, honestly, you can't panic enough to just say that the running backs are who you want to play, where you want to go with Chase Brown and Alvin Kamara down in the flex. Now, if Kamara does miss, then I would say A.J. Brown is your next best option here. And clearly we are lowering expectations with the Saints offense, where this week you actually do have them projected to be the second lowest scoring offense in the league with an implied team total of 18 points. But again, if Kamara is healthy, you should get the receiving usage. But Kamara wasn't at practice today. So if Kamara does end up missing, then you would pivot over to A.J. Brown. Now, Big Boy Crispy coming out says, need help, lots of players with bad matchups. Okay, so going through and looking at this, Chase Brown is just an absolute locked and loaded starter regardless. You have a bunch of super solid players on our team. Can we get the easy ones out of the way? I think it's pretty easy to say, you should probably go ahead and look to start Justin Jefferson, Chase Brown, but then after that, I would go David Njoku over Jonnu Smith, to start Josh Allen. The issue is we got 3 spots open in the lineup, and this team somehow has Kupp, Lamb, Sutton, Higgins, Kyron, Cook, Connor, Sharp. So this is an almost impossible question to answer, to be completely honest with you. I mean, if I'm going to go through and if I'm going to look at my running back rankings this week, I do have Kyron at 10, Connor at 11. So I have them back to back, but I did make those rankings under the assumption that Kenneth Walker does play. If you have no Walker, I think you put Zach Charbonnet there as well. Going over to what we had at wide receiver, I mean, we were sitting with CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 7. Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 10. And then Sutton, wide receiver 13. So they are incredibly close. If I had to pick somebody, I'd probably go Lamb. This is a full PPR format. We're more likely than not to play the wide receiver in the flex. At running back, here's what I think. Oh, dear God. Can I see what the underdog pick'ems are? when it's this close, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go over an underdog and see if we can use them as a tiebreaker. Because this is what got us on Isaac Gurindo being a must-start running back last week. Just to be completely honest and pull the cover back with y'all. Y'all know I didn't know how to project Gurindo in terms of if he was going to be used as a feature back or not. So early in the week, I wasn't answering a lot of questions as, oh no, Isaac Gurindo's a must-start RB. I'm not saying he is this week. Obviously, the injury is changing some things here. But last week, I was going, oh, I don't know if he's going to must-start running back or not. Then we went over to these underdog picks, and I saw Isaac Gurindo was like higher or lower, 92.5 total yards. And I went, okay, never mind. I'm an idiot. Get this guy in your lineup. So honestly, I think you can use this as a tiebreaker a lot of times. Kyren Williams, higher or lower, 87.5 total yards. James Cook, higher or lower, 66.5 total yards. So just simply is not in the same tier, which is how we had them ranked as well. James Conner, 97.5 total yards. Much better matchup against the Pats, where they are heavily favored. I have James Conner and Kyren Williams ranked back-to-back. I have Kyren at 10, Conner at 11. Can y'all please spam the chat? Who are y'all going to go with? And then I think you could make an argument as well to go with Charbonnet if you have no Kenneth Walker. The issue is you're just not going to have that clarity yet on if you have to make that call. So if you wanted to go through and if you wanted to start Kyren Williams, obviously you'd have to tonight. We got Connor. Dear God. You know what? You can plan on going Connor, and if Walker misses, then you'll have the clarity and you can pivot over to Zach Charbonnet. The thing is, if you go with Kyren right now, you're not going to get that clarity to make that pivot. And then going over to the flex spot, I probably do end up playing Cooper Kupp in a full PPR format, but since he plays on Thursday, I'm going to put Kupp in at wide receiver. I'll move Lamb down to the flex just in case something happens where we do have to make that swap. Now, Mario coming through with the start set question. Here, this 2 receiver, 1 flex. The best players that we have on our bench are Charbonnet, Evans, Higgins. I wouldn't start Evans over Jacob, St. Brown, or Nico. Charbonnet, I think you could possibly make an argument to go with him instead of Kyren if you knew you were going to have no Walker, but we just don't have that clarity at this point. So yeah, I think you leave this lineup as is. It's a phenomenal team. If you really wanted, or if you really thought that there was a good chance Kenneth Walker was going to miss this week and you wanted to play Zach Charbonnet, what you could look to do is bench Kyren Williams, move Josh Jacobs up to running back, put Charbonnet in the flex, and then if you actually have Kenneth Walker playing, then pivot from Charbonnet to either Evans or Higgins, preferably Evans. But also, you can just go with this lineup as is. That other options if you really wanted to get Charbonnet in if Walker does miss. Now, the Soaring Eagle coming through with the Superflex. I'm for sure going to be playing Jared Goff here at the Superflex spot. I mean, I think this week is probably the best week you're going to ever see in terms of how a game projects with total points. You have an over-under of 55.5 points here for this Rams-Bills game. I'm sorry, not Rams-Bills game, for this Lions-Bills game. It hasn't been too long since Goff was a Ram. But yeah, I think you actually do have to see the Detroit Lions throwing the ball a bit here, which is why I also want to put Jamison Williams in there at wide receiver too. And then going down to the flex, Josh Downs did practice today. So I think it looks like Josh Downs should be good to go. I think you plan on Downs, and your option to pivot would probably end up being Elijah Moore if you have no Cedric Tillman. And if Tillman does play, then I think you throw your hands up in the air, and I have no idea what the hell to do. Now, J.P. Russell coming out. Quarterback, we are going to go ahead. We're going to take Jalen Hurts. I have no idea how you have all those quarterbacks. I would say that if your trade deadline hasn't passed, for the love of God, trade one of them away. Going over to running back, I think you just have to plan on playing Jahmyr Gibbs. You had no Breece or Bucky at practice today. Going over to the flex, here's what I'm going to tell you to do. I think you plan on Breece and Bucky. Now, if one of these running backs miss, then it's an easy spot to say, okay, well, in that case, you're going to pivot over to Malik Neighbors. Now, if both these running backs miss, then okay, we'll pivot to Malik Neighbors and Braylon Allen. But if the running backs are good, if the running backs are healthy, that's plan A. Malik Neighbors is immediately plan B. But again, you do have the Giants projecting out to not just be the worst offense in the NFL this week, but to be the worst offense in the NFL by a mile. Now, J-Pack says, Jaden Reed as the squeaky wheel versus Jameson Williams. So I'm going to go Jameson Williams myself. Just going right back to what we were talking about previously, where you have an over-under of 55 points for this Lions-Bills game. I do think that this is a world in which you actually do see just a tremendous amount of dropbacks for Jared Goff, and they do have to push the pass attempts, which typically it's a team that is so far out ahead that they were able to just run the ball consistently with the best running back duo that I can really ever remember seeing. And like, please correct me if I'm wrong, and please let me know this in the live chat right now. This is just a fun thing to think about. I started playing fantasy football, I think, in about 2009. That sounds about right. Maybe 2008. 2008, 2009. I didn't become like die-hard fantasy football playing in 20-plus dynasty leagues a year until 2014. But from that period, say over the last 20 years, have we seen a better combination of running backs and offensive line play than what the Detroit Lions have right now? And please let me know in the live chat, because I know a lot of y'all have been playing a lot longer than I have. So over the past 20 years, has there been a better combo of a pair of running backs and offensive line than what you've had in Detroit? So in a lot of these games, you just simply don't get a lot of passing attempts for Goff. But I think this is one of those scenarios where you actually do end up seeing a bunch of Jared Goff dropbacks. And I think this is a good week to start Jameson. D says Tevin Coleman and Devonta Smith with Atlanta in 2016. I don't think so. I know Coleman was like a 5th round pick, Devonta Smith 2nd round pick, year in and year out. Like the thing is, if you were to redraft today, Jahmyr Gibbs goes round 1 and like David Montgomery goes round 2. I mean, yeah, you could make an argument for like the single backs, but the combination of Gibbs, like if I was an NFL team, I'd rather have the combination of Gibbs, Montgomery with the Lions offensive line than like CMC last year. But obviously I'm an idiot. I could just be using recency bias here. Now, Califas says, which defense should we go with? The Bengals, Jets, Steelers. So really awkward spot where you do have the Bengals and the Jets, both with great matchups as heavy favorites. You have the Steelers as the 2nd highest scoring defense in the NFL so far this season. But the Steelers, I believe, are 5-point dogs to the Eagles. So it is real tough, to be honest. I personally would probably go with the Jets going up against the Jags, where the Jags are tied with the Saints, projected to be the 2nd lowest scoring offense in the league. The Jets defense has been very bad, but they're pretty heavy favorites. They're going up against a garbage team. And I'd rather be going up against the Jags than I would the Eagles. Now, Yak Season says, selfishly hoping Walker misses again. I don't blame you at all, my friend. Here, wide receiver, Jawan Jennings, phenomenal matchup tonight. Not going to be surprised at all if Jennings just goes nuclear. He's the clear wide receiver one in San Francisco. I'd say 99% of the time. You can label him as a must-start receiver. With all that crap being said, though, London's been averaging 11 targets a game over the past month. I go London. And then down here in the flex, I mean, if you have no Walker, I think you go Charbonnet. If Walker plays, I think you go Pacheco. Pacheco only had about 8.9 points, I think, last week, but he did have 18 opportunities. I think he played like 53% of the snaps or so. But the snaps are going up, opportunities are going up. This 3rd week back, I think you see him continue to ramp the usage in a positive direction. So I think that's the expectation to go with. But obviously, yeah, the hope is you have no Walker, so we just know that Charbonnet is the true bell cow. But Doug P coming through with a massive start sit. Really appreciate you, my guy. Let me hook you up with a couple more free start sit questions. That way you can send them in through the rest of the playoffs. Mason, I'm struggling. I'm going up against the top dog in the first round. We need the ceiling. He has Lamar, Saquon, Barkley. Ooh, well. Good news is here, real quick. Sorry. Hey, Elliot, is Miley in the front yard? Well, oh no, I hear her in the back. Never mind. Sorry. I thought I heard her barking in the front. Sorry, I thought the dog was out in the front yard. I heard some barking. Sounded like it was coming from the wrong side of the house, where the dog, the gate's been open a couple times, and she won't run away. But what she does is she goes to the front yard, stands there, and barks like a crazy person. But anyway, yeah, if we are going up against Lamar, Saquon, Barkley, we need the ceiling. The ceiling play here, they've been down. We're going to go A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp. I know you put considering Adam Thielen, and you actually do have the Panthers projecting out, I believe, with better projections than we've seen all season, at least all season with Bryce Young. I don't know if we had an Adam Thielen week where they had an implied team total of 23 points, but decent spot for Thielen. There's just no world which I can start him over A.J. Brown and Kupp, especially in a game where you probably actually see both offenses forced to throw. And then I think if you have no Bucky Irving, you're going to go with Rachaad White down in the flex. However, if Bucky Irving does play, then I think you pivot over and you look at Garrett Wilson. Now, Dill Pill coming through. Wide receiver, you just got to start Jawan Jennings in a great matchup against the Rams. Good projections for this Niners offense. And obviously, Debo's just turned into an absolute turd. I'm going down to the flex. If Bucky does not play, I want to be going with Rachaad White. However, if Bucky does play, then at that point, I honestly don't know. Really not too interested in going with Swift with the matchup. It's going to be down to the receivers with DJ Moore, Adam Thielen, Brian Thomas, and Devonta Smith. I'm looking at where I have them ranked this week. I have Brian Thomas 26, Thielen 27, DJ Moore 28, Devonta Smith 30. I have them literally ranked back to back to back to back. So these wide receivers, very difficult to choose between. Again, I think you go Rachaad White if you have no Bucky Irving. But if Bucky Irving does play, I think you go with Brian Thomas. It is a spot where he's the last guy standing in Jacksonville. Obviously, it's a garbage offense, but at least you're going to have the target share. Now, Dustin says, hey, Mason, need some help with the lineup for first round. Second quarterback spot is actually a super flex. Well, we're just going to roll with both quarterbacks. Tough matchup for A-Rich, but he can get there regardless with the rushing upside. Wide receiver, we're still going to view A.J. Brown as a must-start option. Of course, I will say that I acknowledge A.J. Brown has been very disappointing. It's been a rush-first offense where you just simply have not seen the passing volume really support what you'd want to see from A.J. Brown in this offense. We're going to go with T. Higgins. T. Higgins gave you the dud this past week, but really it's only the second down performance that you've had from Higgins all season now. I'm going over to tight ends. If Kincaid plays, we're going to go with Dalton Kincaid in what should be the highest scoring game of the week, and a game in which you actually do have a bunch of dropbacks for both quarterbacks. Now, if Kincaid misses, we're going to go over to Hunter Henry, who's actually accumulated a ridiculous amount of targets with Drake May under center. Now, with that being said, of course, the touchdowns haven't exactly been there. And then going over to the flex, it's either going to be Jordan Addison or Jalen Waddle. I personally have them ranked back-to-back here. I have Waddle at 23 and Addison at 24. Can we see if the underdog projections or pick'ems can give us some help here? Waddle's higher, lower, 56.5 total yards. Addison is higher, lower, 51.5 total yards. So yeah, I mean, they do have Waddle ahead of Addison as well. So I think you go with Waddle. You do have lowered expectations with this Dolphins offense in comparison to what we are typically seeing, though. Now, Slay coming through with the start set. We need two receivers. We're going to be going with Lamb, London. I understand London's been disappointing. The touchdowns haven't been there in this offense, or at least through the air. But, I mean, you have had at least I don't know, a considerable amount of targets, 11 targets game over the past month. Going down to the flex, you're looking at Miller, McCormick, Corum. I'm not interested in any of this garbage. I'm going to go with Malik Neighbors. Adam Thielen is a strong consideration. I have Adam Thielen in a decent amount of underdog drafts, so I'm hoping Thielen gets there. Y'all know I didn't draft Neighbors really at all this season based off offense. But again, just looking at the consistent target volume that you have with Neighbors, he's higher, lower, 61.5 total yards. Adam Thielen currently higher, lower, 50.5 total yards. It's just hard to get there with the projections. But you do have Carolina projecting out to score almost 10 points more than the Giants this week. Now, Justice Man says ESPN standard scoring need a quarterback, wide receiver, and help with Breece Hall. So the best receiver to get in your lineup that you don't currently have would be Jerry Jeudy. For me, based off the offense being a lot better in Cleveland, I would prefer Jeudy. You actually see the projections be much higher with Jeudy in terms of both his ability to score a touchdown as well as receiving yardage mark in comparison to Malik Neighbors. So I would prefer to go with Jeudy, just much more passing volume in his offense. We're going to keep Bo Nix there at quarterback. And then going down to the flex, yeah, plan A is going to be Breece Hall. If Breece Hall plays, good matchup against the Jags, but Breece Hall did end up missing practice today, so looks like a very real possibility that Breece ends up missing this game and you end up having to play Malik Neighbors instead. Now, Team Mode coming out with a start-sit question. Here, tight ends, we have a bunch of guys to choose from. I think David Njoku is the easy call here. Jonnu Smith has been better than David Njoku over the past month, but David Njoku's actually been the guy that's had the target volume in this offense, which is what I'm going to be a little bit more excited for. And then going over to what we are looking at with the flex options, it's a dynasty league, so we have a bunch of potential flexes. Guys like Najee Harris, Keenan Allen, Jalen Waddle are the players that stand out, plus all those tight ends that we previously talked about. It's a brutal matchup for Najee Harris. I've not had a chance to see what Underdog has the projections out with Najee. Higher, lower is 71.5 total yards, which I'm actually a little bit surprised with. Keenan Allen with the Bears, they project to be the third lowest scoring offense in the league, but obviously get the reception volume that you're not going to get from Najee in this full PPR format. But regardless, we're just choosing between one of these guys because we know we want to go with Jalen Waddle in the other instance. Both offenses look to be bad. I mean, you actually have lower projections on the Steelers offense this week than we've seen all season in the tough matchup against Philly. People are saying Njoku is out. I did not see David Njoku get ruled out. I know Njoku wasn't at practice with the hamstring. If David Njoku is out, then we're going to pivot over to Jonnu. But let me confirm that David Njoku is out here. Because like I said, I saw that he missed practice on Thursday with the hamstring. I didn't get the official word that he'd be missing this game, which would absolutely suck for me. Okay, I don't see him officially being ruled out. I see people saying that it's a very real possibility he is. Okay, Frank says unofficial but unlikely to play. Okay, thank you for letting me know. In that instance, I think you're playing on Jonnu. And going back over here to that second flex spot, between Keenan, Najee Harris, I do think it's up to you. Again, this is the lowest that we have seen this offense project in Pittsburgh. But it's not like the Bears have a great offense in their own right. You do get the receptions with Keenan that you're not going to get with Najee. I think I probably play it safe and just go with the guaranteed touches that you're going to get with Najee Harris. But honestly, that 100% could be the wrong call. Now, Newton's Law coming out with our next start set. Here, running back, we're choosing between James Cook and Braylon Allen if he fills in for Breece. I'm still going to go James Cook. Lowered expectations, of course. Tough matchup against the Lions, where typically you are seeing teams just really have to go out there and throw the ball. I don't expect that to be super different this week in Buffalo, but you can very easily see the receiving upside with James Cook regardless. Going over to the flex, I think you want to play. Actually, you have A.J. Brown here. You got to play A.J. Brown. Juwan Jennings, A.J. Brown. Jennings has been much better, of course. There's just been simply way more passing volume in San Francisco. Jennings for this game is higher, lower, 12.95 fantasy points. A.J. Brown, higher, lower, 80.5 total yards. Freaking massive projections on him. Kind of surprised to see it. But again, it may be a game in which the Eagles are forced to throw the ball a bit more, because it could be a competitive contest here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, even if they are favored by about 5.5 points. So while 100% understand A.J. Brown has been disappointing, you drafted the dude in round 1. He hasn't been close to giving you a return on that investment. I still think he's somebody that you realistically have to start. Now going over to the flex here for Randy, we're going to assume that Kamara is good to go, and plan on going with Kamara, and I think Juwan Jennings is the other easy call. The real question is, if Kamara doesn't play, which Kamara wasn't at practice today, who could you potentially pivot over to? You have a bunch of tight ends that I'm not interested in. I guess you have Sincere McCormick. I guess you'd go with McCormick if you didn't have Alexander Mattison. But if Alexander Mattison plays and it looks to be a 3-man running back by committee in a garbage offense, I'd probably go Michael Wilson. So I think plan A is Kamara. Plan B is probably Michael Wilson there. Now, Tommy coming through. We need help at quarterback, where right now we are looking at Tua versus Darnold. Probably end up going with, I don't know. Looking at my rankings this week, they are effectively back-to-back. We have Darnold at 9. We have Tua at 11. Again, we're typically used to seeing the Miami Dolphins with an implied total of 25, 26 points, which is what makes these guys super interesting, just because the projections are typically very, very high on this Dolphins offense, and they have been scoring a crap ton of points as of late. But here you actually do have the projections being much lower this week, with an implied team total of like 22.5 points, which is still not bad, but they're not being projected to be like a top 5 offense in the league. Whereas you do have the Vikings, and also Darnold is hot as well. And going down here to the flex, I think plan A is Sincere McCormick if you have no Alexander Mattison. If Madison plays and it looks to be a 3-man running back by committee and a full BBR format, I think you could pivot over to Hunter Henry, where you do have the guaranteed targets since Drake May has taken over. Now, Adeas Fit says too many options, all assuming Kenneth Walker sits. Well, we're going to go Kamara here, running back regardless. Wide receiver, we're going to go Lamb over Judy, even if it's close. So if you have no Kenneth Walker, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Zach Charbonnet down here in this flex spot. However, if Kenneth Walker does end up playing, then instead I think you pivot over to Jerry Judy. So if you have no Kenneth Walker, you go with Charbonnet. If Walker does play, you pivot over to Judy. Especially if you have no Njoku, Jerry Judy becomes that much more appealing, because even if Tillman comes in to see a couple more of those targets over the top, I don't necessarily know if you can sit here and say that, oh, okay, well, they're going to take too many targets away from Judy, because Tillman's not going to be able to replicate the target share that David Njoku has. Cat the Reg, happy to see you, says, need to win playoffs. Need your best review, Mason. Thank you as always. No, thank you. And 100%, I understand the pressure is on here. I think you're probably going to end up playing both of these Lions running backs with Gibbs and Montgomery. It's not my favorite spot for Montgomery, considering the fact that you probably do have a decent amount of dropbacks for Jared Goff here. I think it's probably a spot where they are playing keep up. Going over to receiver, obviously we got to play Jamar. A DJ Moore, Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen, not the easiest call. Myers is sitting with a really good matchup against Atlanta, but sitting with horrendous quarterback play. You actually do have some pretty good projections with this Panthers offense. Out of the 3 offenses here, sportsbooks are projecting the Panthers to score the most points. We can go over and we can look at what you have with these receivers right now with their underdog projections. Myers is higher, lower, 60.5 receiving yards. Adam Thielen's higher, lower, 50.5 receiving yards. And DJ Moore is higher, lower, 57.5. And again, you actually do have the Raiders, even though they have garbage quarterback play, because they have a great matchup against Atlanta, projecting to score more points than Chicago this week. So I think you take the guy that has double-digit targets most of these weeks in Jacoby Myers. Tight end, we're going to go Jonnu, but selfishly, I'm really hoping Laporta outscores them. And I think you're just going to go out, you're going to take James Cook down here in the flex and try to get as many options in the highest scoring game this week as you possibly can. Even if you're expecting a ton of pass attempts here in this Buffalo Bills offense, you can get some receiving usage for James Cook. Now, Westberg coming through. Quarterback, we're looking at Brock Purdy or Baker. Really good matchup for Purdy. This is a defense that gave up 6 touchdowns to Josh Allen just 4 days ago at this point. Going over to receiver, we're going to be looking at, dear God, probably Lamb and London. I really do still think A.J. Brown's close to these guys, though. I mean, if you're looking at A.J. Brown versus London, my only thing is you've had one game with double-digit targets for A.J. Brown so far this season. And over the past month, London's been averaging 11 targets a game. Going over to tight end, you go George Kittle. And then in the flex, I think the plan is probably James Conner and A.J. Brown. I would still go A.J. Brown over Rachaad White, even if Bucky Irving, even if Bucky Irving doesn't play, because while I'd assume Rachaad White is the majority of the work, it's a tough matchup. And at the same time, you probably do see some Sean Tucker in there. Now, Jake A coming through. We need a flex call. We're looking at Charbonnet, Jaden Reed, Amari, and Ladd McConkey. I think plan A is Zach Charbonnet if you have no Kenneth Walker. Plan B is Ladd McConkey if he does play. And if you have Kenneth Walker playing and no Ladd McConkey, I think plan C is you say F it and play Kenneth Walker regardless. I'm sorry, play Zach Charbonnet regardless and hope that Walker is kind of phased out. But let me refresh this to get some more of the newer questions up here. And this question coming out from Amy Chen. Here this a start sit. Flex, we're looking at Dowdle, Swift, Allen, Thielen, and Adonai Mitchell. Here I think you just go with Rico Dowdle. Dowdle's a running back in which it's a really good matchup against Carolina. It's maybe a little bit surprising, at least surprising for me to see that the Panthers are pretty heavy favorites here by about 3.5 points. But you are looking at Rico Dowdle over the past, I want to say 3 games he's played now, seeing 20 plus opportunities each contest. So I think you can go ahead and you can play Dowdle relatively easily. Now Run CMC says, weird league, we start 6, 0 flex. Kyron or Charbonnet Thursday night football. Not 100% sure on A.J. Brown considering T. And then Njoku or Hawkinson. So it sounds like you are going to have no David Njoku. So you're most likely going to end up with TJ Hawkinson. Running back, if you don't have clarity on Kenneth Walker by tonight's game, I personally would just play it safe and I would just go ahead and play Kyron Williams. Obviously, I mean, we would rather have, I don't know. We would rather have Charbonnet with no Walker, but you're having to make that call before you get the clarity. So with that in mind, I think you just go ahead and you just play Walker tonight. Wide receiver, I'm going to go A.J. Brown still over T. Higgins. Again, I understand the hesitation here where the passing volume is just so much higher in Cincinnati than it is in Philadelphia. But still, you do have really nice projections for A.J. Brown this week. And then at tight end, we're going to go with Hawkinson. But really appreciate you, my friend, and really wishing you the best of luck for this week. Now, J.K. coming through. We need a flex. We're looking at Sharp, Pacheco, Metcalf, JSN. Plan A is going to be Zach Charbonnet if you have no Kenneth Walker. And then I think we can say, yeah, this is a full PPR format. That plan B is probably going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I think you're going to keep it in Seattle regardless, but you're going to hope that Walker doesn't play so we can just get in Charbonnet and just have the true 3-down bell cow. Now, Napacorn coming out. Running back, we're looking at Jacobs is a must-start guy. Montgomery is a must-start guy regardless. Wide receivers, St. Brown and Cup are must-start players regardless. Tight ends, I mean, hell, it is really tough, but Kyle Pitts is averaging like fewer than a reception a game over the past month, or maybe about like 1.2 receptions per game off the top of my head. I think you go with Schultz, anybody but Pitts. And then down here for the flex, we're just going to go ahead and take Cortland Sutton. Tony Pollard does miss practice today, so maybe even if Pollard does play in a decent little matchup here, you could potentially see him split in the backfield with Spears, which hasn't been the case over the past few weeks. Now, Murphy Owen says, need help considering running back injuries plus wide receivers available. So you have Brees banged up. You have Walker banged up. You have no Brees practicing today. I don't know if we've had official word on Walker just yet. Let's run through a bunch of these possibilities. Let's go through the hypothetical. Walker plays. Let's go through what happens if Brees and Walker both play. If Brees plays and Walker plays, you start Brees and Dowdle, because we assume Seattle, they split the backfield in that instance. Going over to receiver, you'll start Cortland Sutton. And down in the flex, you'll flip a coin and you'll go with whatever Jets receiver that you want between Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. However, let's go through the hypothetical that you actually have no Brees and Walker plays. In that instance, you play both the combo of Brian Robinson and Rico Dowdle. What happens if Walker misses and Brees misses? Then you're probably going to go with Charbonnet and Dowdle, or Charbonnet and Walker. Or Charbonnet and Robinson. Really, it is just going to be up to you on what you want between Dowdle and Robinson. There's really no instance in which I play Braylon Allen here, even if it's a good matchup. If he's splitting with Isaiah Davis, I'd rather have both Dowdle and Robinson over him. Even if you were to have a Brees missing. So I think you just go ahead and you lock in those receivers and that flex. And then again, if both the starting running backs play, you're going to take Brees and Dowdle. If both the starting running backs miss, you're going to go Charbonnet and Dowdle, or you can pivot from Dowdle to Brian Robinson. Honestly, Brian Robinson is very appealing with the matchup. Now, Rishi says, need help with the flex and quarterback. Reed is hard to trust, but has a high ceiling. Darnold seems safe as well. I don't see where other option is at quarterback, my friend. Going over to the flex, I 100% agree. I think Jaden Reed is a tough player to trust at this point. Again, my favorite stat, we've said it 1,000 times now. This is a receiver that has had one game all season with more than 6 targets. But if your next best option is Xavier Worthy, it's not like Xavier Worthy's done anything to make you go, okay, I 100% can trust him with zero hesitation. So I think all these players down here in the flex are very much liabilities. And I think we have seen the highest ceiling from Reed, and Reed's in the best offense here. So I think you just go ahead and you take Jaden Reed over Xavier Worthy, ETN, and Hunter Henry. Now, Andres coming out says Purdy or Jordan Love. Also, the Broncos defense should be all right, question mark. The Broncos defense should be great this week against Indy. I would go with Purdy over Love this week, given the matchup that you have that's really strong against the Rams. Running back, Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, both absolute must-start guys. Wide receiver, you can say the same thing about Puka and Lamb. So we're going to have a good idea after the game tonight based off what Puka does. Tight end, seems like David Njoku may miss, so you may have to pick somebody else up. And then down here in the flex, I would go Zay Flowers. I'm really wanting to do anything I can to avoid Tracy in a game in which the Giants are like 15-point dogs against the Ravens. Now, let's move this over to Samel. Says, unsure about Brown this week. We have Bucky and Jameson. Sorry, I can't tell if this is a fruit fly flying around me or a freaking mosquito. Hopefully it's a fruit fly. A Bucky Jameson. Jameson's obviously the default backup option here. Bucky doesn't play. Bucky didn't practice today. So it looks like you may end up having to go with Jamison Williams, and which isn't a bad thing. Jamison has a really good spot where it should be a really high scoring game environment against Buffalo this week. But definitely not an easy call here. If Bucky plays, I'd probably go with him. But again, you would be taking a risk while at the same time, it is a tough matchup that you have against the Chargers. Now, I went to Jared, says need a quarterback and 2 flexes, thinking Murray, Tracy, and JT. Quarterback, I would go Kyler over Baker. You do have the Cardinals projecting to score significantly more points than the Bucs this week, with the Bucs having a relatively difficult matchup against the Chargers. While at the same time, obviously, Kyler is just naturally going to be giving you more rushing upside anyway. So if you have the Cardinals supposedly scoring more offense than Tampa, that's where I'm going to want to go. And then going over to what we have with the 2 flex spots. Again, I would prefer to avoid Tracy with how bad that Giants offense should be. I think Taylor's going to be a must-start player here for your first flex. The second spot really comes down, are you going to go with Tracy or maybe Brian Thomas? I think they're close enough, or if you really wanted to go with Tracy, I'm not going to fault you for it. But again, I would look to avoid this Giants offense any chance we can. They don't just project to be the worst offense in the league this week. They project to be the worst offense in the league by a wide, wide margin. Now, Ethan coming out. Quarterback, we're looking at Stafford versus Bo Nix. I think you're going to go with Bo. You have a little more rushing upside, of course. A running back, if Breeze plays, actually, you can just play it safe with Garindo. Who's our other option for the flex? We're going to go with Jawan Jennings down here. But of course, since Jennings plays tonight, I'd move Jennings, the wide receiver, just move London down to the flex in case anything happens. Ah, dear God. F it. There's no reason for them to rush Brees and to put Brees into a game and into a spot where he can potentially harm himself for 2025. The Jets have nothing at this point. As always, the Jets need to blow it up. Brees didn't practice on Thursday. Like, you miss a game and then you're not practicing by the Thursday the next week. I don't know how likely that is for you to actually be able to get in. Obviously, the reason we really have to think about this is because Garindo plays tonight, so you got to make a decision without all the information. So I think you probably plan on going with Isaac Garindo, running back with the same workload that you had last week. He is the easy answer, and he absolutely crushes here. The issue is, how healthy is he really, and does he end up splitting the backfield with Patrick Taylor? Now, I went to Jared, says, is JT a lock at running back too? We need flex help for sure. Our other running backs would be like Bucky, Dowdle, Pollard. I would go with Taylor. I mean, you do have the Colts projecting out to be a higher scoring offense than the Cowboys or Titans, and Taylor's going to have 100% of his own backfield. Moving over and looking at what we have with the flex. I think you take Dowdle. I don't really have too much interest in DJ Moore here over a running back that we know is going to have a 3-down workload. It's a great matchup going up against the Panthers. Again, I believe this maybe is the first time that we have seen Bryce Young be favored in a game all season. So I don't want to get too pumped up about Rico Dowdle, but I think he's the play here. Now, Sano says, win and I'm in the playoffs. Please help. How have your playoffs not started yet, my friend? Looking at this, a wide receiver, I think you have to go ahead. I think you have to play Kupp over Evans and Sutton, but they are very close. I would prefer Evans over Sutton down there in the flex spot as well. I can't tell what your quarterback is. Sutton is right there, though, where, I mean, if you are looking at Sutton, he has given you an incredibly high floor. Since he gave you the goose egg against, I want to say, the Saints way back like 6 Thursday nights ago, Sutton has been just an absolute lock for a minimum of 15 full PPR points every single week. Now, moving over to our next question. This was coming out from MJM. Running back, James Conner, easy play, heavy favorite, good matchup against the Pats. Wide receiver, we're going to be going with Terry and Tyreek very easily. Down here in the flex, it's a full PPR format, so I probably end up taking Davante Adams here. Again, not a great matchup that you have for James Cook, where they're probably going to be throwing the ball a bunch, and you're probably going to expect a bunch of Josh Allen dropbacks. But it's a good matchup for Davante Adams. You do have an applied team total of like 21 points here for this Jets offense, so they should be able to move the ball down the field. LB727. I'm assuming we need 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a flex. So in that instance, we're going to go with Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving if Bucky plays. Jonathan Taylor, Rachaad White if Bucky Irving misses. Wide receiver, we're going to be playing A.J. Brown and Davante Adams. And for the flex spot, we are going to take Calvin Ridley. And it may look like you actually need to pivot over to a different tight end if David Njoku were to miss this week. Okay. Now, let's move this over. Cali Kid says, what's up, Mason? First round, need a win. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, my guy. Looking over at running back here, I think you just lock and load Chase Brown, 3-down workload of one of the best offenses in the league. Very easy. I would prefer James Conner probably over Kyron at this point, where you do have the Cards as heavy favorites. It's a good matchup. Conner actually is seeing more receiving usage than Kyron Williams here. The wide receiver, London, still a must-start option. I think you're going to go with Jawan Jennings, wide receiver 2 as well, in a good spot. We're going to go McBride, and then down in the flex, we are just going to take Kyron Williams with the guaranteed 3-down touches. Okay. Now, MJM coming through. Running back, if you have no Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet is an easy play over James Cook. However, if Kenneth Walker is good to go, I'd rather play Cook. Wide receiver, you just simply play Tyreek, London. Don't really need to think about it much. Tight end, you're going to go with Otton versus Ertz is tough. Ertz has scored a touchdown every game over the past 3 weeks. It is a pretty good offense with how it projects in Washington. And Zach Ertz has been earning more targets, and Cade Otton has a pretty tough matchup against the Chargers. So I probably go Zach Ertz here, but it's close. And then down in the flex, if Vlad plays, you're going to go with Ladd McConkey in a great matchup. And if Vlad misses, you're going to go with Davante Adams in a good matchup as well. But definitely between those 2 options. Castillo says, 3rd place to no buy. Need help for the lineup here. Okay, my guy. Running back, I think you just take Garindo. I mean, even if Walker were to play, you assume that he ends up splitting with Charbonnet. So really, no, I don't want to count on Kenneth Walker this week. No interest in doing so. It's very difficult to sit here and say, oh yeah, we saw Isaac Garindo be a true 3-down workhorse last week, so we know that's going to be the case tonight as well. A reality of the situation is he's dealing with a foot sprain that he had 4 days ago. He is their 3rd running back on the depth chart. So there is a possibility that this coaching staff goes, hey, Isaac, buddy, I'm going to need you to take a couple of these pills. We're just going to have you out there for a few snaps. We're not going to ask a lot from you. Patrick Taylor is going to have the majority of the work. Patrick Taylor is maybe going to have half the backfield. And we just need to get through the game. Like, I don't think Garindo is a must-start running back. Of course, we saw him absolutely dominate. Really, really nice workload this past week. And if you could easily project that same workload to be there this next week, it'd be a very easy start. But it is really tough to know if that is going to be the case. Let's move this over to our next question coming out from Elias. Here, wide receiver, we have Kupp, Myers, Evans. I think you still go with Kupp for tonight. And then down in the flex, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Mike Evans. The only pivot that I think you can make is if you were to have no Bucky Irving, if you wanted to pivot from Evans over to Rachaad White, not going to fault you whatsoever for it. Another question here from Elias. The flex, we need to choose between Pacheco, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. No, it looks like this is a non-PPR format. If it is truly a non-PPR league, I think we want to go ahead and we probably just want to lock and load Pacheco. If it's a full PPR format, I think it's probably easy to say that we want to make a pivot and instead you probably want to be going with Waddle. But yeah, I can't consider Devonta Smith here. Lowered passing volume, tough matchup. And yeah, I think Devonta Smith's the only other guy that you could go with. But non-PPR league, you had 18 opportunities for Pacheco this past week. Elias coming through with another start sit. This is a full PPR format. 14-team double flex dynasty league. So options look really gross. You have no Eckler. You have no Deontay. You have no Olave. I think you probably end up going Hopkins and Javonte. If you had no Garindo, I'd want... You know what? I'm not even going to go with Javonte. I'm going to go with Jalen Warren. Here you have the Steelers actually as 5-point dogs against the Eagles. I think that this is a game where you could possibly end up seeing a considerable amount of dropbacks here for Russ if they are going to be trailing the majority of it. So in that instance, let's just go ahead. Let's take Jalen Warren and operate under the assumption that we are going to be pretty safe when it comes to the targets that he gets out of this backfield. Like, I think you can pretty much pencil in that you should see, I don't know, 4+ receptions almost as a guarantee here. Okay. Moving this over to Slush Monkey. Says, Hall's my RB1, but maybe out for the flex. Is Harrison or Smith? Harrison might get more targets with the recent drama. Or Smith may get. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. I'm not considering drama into our start set question. I'll tell you that much. I think you're going to go with Bo Nix over Baker. Where Baker, you have a really tough matchup. Running back, you're going to go with Breece and Ramondre. Simply, if Breece doesn't play, you just switch over to Braylon Allen, but that is a tough spot. And then down here in the flex, between Devonta Smith and Marvin Harrison, Harrison's actually seen considerably more targets than Devonta Smith. Smith has a pretty tough matchup here as well. I have them ranked back-to-back in our wide receiver ranks this week. You have Devonta Smith, higher, lower, 46.5 receiving yards. Harrison, higher, lower, 57.5. If it's that big of a discrepancy, I think it's probably just an easy spot to go ahead. I need to take Harrison, who over the past 2 weeks, I want to say has had a total of 21 targets. Now, Yang says, Rip Badaki, LOL. Poor Badaki. It is funny. The dude was second in the league. Zach was first. Badaki was second. And Badaki just absolutely collapsed. Like, collapsed. But we lost CMC and JK playing my nemesis. All right. Quarterback, we're going to go Daniels and Tua. Tua has a pretty tough matchup against Houston as well. Like, typically we are used to seeing 25, 26 points with the implied team total in Miami, with them projecting out as a top 5 offense. Not exactly the case this week against the Texans, but I still think you can go with them. Going over to running back, I'm going to go Tracy. Horrible offense, though. Not super excited about it. McBride there at tight end. And then I think we're going to go with Brian Thomas at wide receiver. Super talented. At the flex. Super talented receiver. But again, issue is just horrendous offense with really bad quarterback play. That Morris kid, longtime member of the flock, happy to see it, says, my flex feels boom or bust. Who to start? Much love, my friend. Flex, easy. I think that it's only between 3 players, of course. Tyreek, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans. I know a lot of people are scared off A.J. Brown. You've had lowered passing volume in Philly. Really rush first offense here. But honestly, I think I would probably go ahead and take A.J. Brown, Mike Evans. Again, you have lowered expectations with this Miami offense in comparison to where it's been over the past month in this game in particular. Going through and looking at the projections that you have with A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's currently higher, lower, 80.5 total yards. You're looking at Evans, who missed practice today, so that will be something to monitor. Higher, lower, 66.5 receiving yards. I guess you'd have a pretty tough matchup there. And Tyreek, higher, lower, 69.5 receiving yards. So A.J. Brown's still the very clear start. And it really comes down to if Evans practices tomorrow, I'd probably go with Evans, feeling comfortable with him having a realistically not much target competition with no Godwin here. I'm not too concerned about Jalen McMillan, even though McMillan crushes this past week. But again, it is a tough matchup for Evans, though. So I'd completely understand if you wanted to go ahead and go Tyreek ahead of him. Now, looking at this from carts, running back, we are going to be going with Chase Brown and Josh Jacobs, just as absolute must-start options, even if Bucky were to be good to go. We're going to go Tyreek and Chase, just very easily here. Tight end, you go with Jonnu, and then hopefully we get to play Bucky and Harrison. However, if Bucky is not going to play, then at that point, I think you pivot over and instead go with Rome Odunze. Okay. Now, Iran Jan coming through. Quarterback, we go Kyler. Running back, a lot up in the air. Of course, we don't have the clarity right now with Charbonnet and Walker. So I think you're going to take Isaac Garindo just as a safe play right now. You had no Pollard at practice today. We don't know the status of if Kenneth Walker is going to be good to go yet. So if you have no Walker, I think you go with Charbonnet here. However, let's go through the hypothetical. You have no Walker. I think you pivot over to, if Walker does play, you pivot over to Tony Pollard. If Walker plays and you have no Tony Pollard, I would rather play Zach Charbonnet in a committee than I would Braylon Allen in a committee, if that makes sense. Now, let's mark that complete. Let's refresh this. Now, Morning View coming out. We need a quarterback and a flex here. Quarterback, we don't have anybody to choose from, my friend. I'm sorry. We did just put out the quarterback rankings today, though. And down in the flex, I think a full PBR format, I'm probably going to go with Harrison over Najee. I have Najee on my own team. Luckily, I have a bye this week, so I don't have to play him in a really tough matchup against Philly, though. So yeah, I'm not super excited about the game environment we should expect against the Eagles, where you do actually have the Steelers, I believe, the first week so far this season as 5.5-point dogs. So would rather avoid Najee Harris. I know Harrison's been very up and down, but you've actually seen the targets get a sharp uptick. Now, Jack Imbarak, longtime member of the flock. Tight end, we are going to go Hawkinson over Kate Otten and hope that Addison doesn't just go nuclear again. Personally, I am hoping it does happen. It looks like you're going to have no George Pickens. So with no Pickens, actually, I think that we are going to end up playing Jordan Addison and Marvin Harrison combined. So I think we're just pretty much all in here on this Minnesota Vikings offense. And I guess we're just kind of hoping that you don't have the blow up from Jefferson. Now, Rugs Uber Driver says rank based on all scenarios for the questionable guys. So if Walker does not play, you're going to go Charbonnet. If Walker does play, you're going to go with Dowdle. Obviously, you could play Isaac Garindo to be safe tonight, but I would rather roll the dice that we get to play Charbonnet later on. And you know what? Actually, you can play Garindo tonight and then do that same exact scenario that we talked about down in the flex. So if Walker misses, you go Sharps. And if Walker plays, you pivot to Dowdle. So really looking at one of these two backs. Okay. Now, Mimosa, sub Thielen for Neighbors or Tracy. Not sure about starting two Giants players against the Ravens. Completely understand wanting to get away from them. Again, you'd have the lowest implied team total of any team in the NFL for the Giants this week by far. And you actually have Tracy higher lower 45.5 rushing yards. And last week, he had some receiving usage, but that hasn't been the case the entire time. So if you wanted to swap Adam Thielen in for somebody, it definitely would be for Tyrone Tracy. It would not be for Malik Neighbors. And honestly, yeah, I think you can play Adam Thielen over Tracy. Wouldn't follow you whatsoever for doing so. Now, Nate 93 coming through. DST week 16-17. Denver with Los Angeles and Cincinnati. No, thank you. Or Indianapolis with the Giants and Tennessee. I would rather have the Indy defense, even if the Broncos are a better defensive unit. I would way rather have some of the best matchups in the NFL to ask for versus some of the worst matchups in the NFL to ask for. So, yeah, give me the Colts defense. Saram, always happy to see you. You doing all right, mate? Playoff times. Good luck. Good luck. And let me hook you up with another free start sit question, my friend. Hopefully we can see you out asking one next week, hoping that you're able to take this down. I think you're going to plan on going with Terry and Addison here at wide receiver. Terry's the easy call. Addison versus Harrison, not too far off. Tight end, I'm going to go with Kincaid, assuming that he is good to go. He got in the full practice today. And then we are going to play Rico Dowdle down in the flex, who does pretty much guarantee us the 3-down workload. Now, Case Soliner, always happy to see a running back. Honestly, even if Charbonnet and Walker have to split the backfield, all these other running backs are going to be committees as well. So I'd rather just play Charbonnet over all of them. We're going to go Andrews at tight end. We're going to pray to God we have some good receivers we can go with. We're going to go Devonta Smith. And I guess we're going to take Jaden Reed here. I mean, really our only other option in that second flex spot other than Jaden Reed, who gives the goose egg this past week, would be to go ahead and play Roma Dunze. But that's not something I am personally interested in doing. Now, Skullified coming out says, who should we start week 15, Tua or Daniels? I know that Tua's been on absolute fire. You actually have consistently seen over this month stretch where Tua has crushed. The Dolphins projecting out pretty much every week to be a top 5 offense in points scored. This week, you actually do have much lower projections on Miami in a pretty tough matchup against the Texans. I think I would prefer to go ahead and take Jaden Daniels, who, one, should be in a higher scoring offense, and two, he actually has more rushing upside himself than Tua. So I'd rather have Daniels if both offenses score the same amount of points, but especially knowing that Washington should score more. Give me him. Now, Jeremy says, from 1-7 to 14-14 and in. Let's go. Mostly a formality, but looking... But locking your lineup weekly until we win the ship. Congrats on the buy. Love the Flock League channel. Thank you so much, my friend. And yeah, congrats. That is insane. And let me hook you up also with a free start set questions. Hopefully you can send something in next week. Hopefully we advance. You already know we're going to start Gibbs, Achane regardless here. Wide receiver, we're going to be starting Wilson and Nico. If you wanted to go with, you know what, we're probably going to go with Jennings here over Wilson because he plays tonight. We're going to want to get both in regardless. And then here down in the flex, we're going to go with Wilson. And if you have no Kenneth Walker this week, we go Zach Charbonnet in that second flex spot. However, if Kenneth Walker does play and the Seattle guys split the backfield, we go with Rico Dowdle in that instance. So plan A is Charbonnet and plan B is Dowdle. And then also, like I said, I hooked you up with that free start set question for this next week as well. So please don't hesitate to send it over my way, my friend. Now, let's go over and look at Carl. Carl needs a receiver and a flex here. Wide receiver, looking at Tyreek, Jennings, Terry. A close spot, I am probably going to go with Tyreek over Terry. I have them ranked back-to-back. Again, lowered expectations on this Miami offense in comparison to what we've had as of late. And then over here for the flex, I think if you have no Kenneth Walker, we're going to play Zach Charbonnet. However, if you do have Kenneth Walker playing, we're going to pivot over to Terry McLaurin. So plan A is Sharps. Plan B is Terry. Now, PPAV always out here. So sorry for the repeat question. Do we trust Garindo tonight? So our option would be Isaac Garindo, and our pivot would potentially be Rashad White or Tony Pollard. So yeah, I think you can go ahead. I think you can play Isaac Rindo. With Rashad White, we don't know if Bucky Irving's going to miss yet or not. While at the same time, with Tony Pollard, he missed practice himself today. So I think you can play Garindo. Again, do I trust him 100%? No. I think that there is a wide range of outcomes. You could see him come through and just be a true 3-down bell cow. But you could also see him maybe just be active because they have such a thin running back depth chart that they kind of have no option, but they need to get him to play, and they're going to use him in a committee type role and really just try to keep him safe. So I'm not sitting here telling everybody to play Isaac Garindo. Obviously, if we knew that he was going to repeat what he did last week, it'd be an easy spot to put him in. Red Zone Riz says, rip me, is it worth dropping somebody for Tillman? Quarterback, I'm going to go Goff over Bo Nix this week, considering how good of a spot it is for the passing volume in this game. Running back, I'm going to go Kamara and probably Pacheco. You can drop Patrick Taylor for Tillman at this point if you wanted to pick up Tillman. Wide receiver, Cup, JSN will be kind of easy plays. Tight end, we're going to go with Kraft over Ingram with Ingram missing. And then I think you probably play both running backs at running back and flex. I think we're going to go Isaac Rindo at RB, and we're going to go Isaiah Pacheco down at the flex, who had 18 opportunities this past week. I'm more interested to see what the projections end up finalizing in on with Pacheco, but they look decent. Now, Jacob says, need help with who to flex this week. Barely made it into the playoffs. Well, we have Allen, so, I mean, we should be in a really good game environment this week. I think you go with Brian Thomas, bad offense, but you're going to get simply every single target in it. And then I think I probably end up going with Jaden Reed as well down here at the second flex. With Reed, again, only one game with more than 6 targets this season. He's been very much up and down. You have to really rely on the efficiency, the big plays, and the touchdowns. And that's something that's extremely difficult to rely upon. But, I mean, looking at Amari's only playing half the snaps. And you may have Keon and Kincaid coming back in this week, which, if that were to happen, you got to lower expectations down with Amari in general. So then we plan on Brian Thomas and Jaden Reed. But let me hook you up with a free start sit question, my friends. So hopefully we win this week and we can see the team again next week. Hogan, always out here. Tight end, we're going to go through and we're going to be playing Kincaid if he is going to go over Kraft. Kincaid did get into full practice today. Ladd McConkey also practiced today. I'm assuming that he does play. And then I would go with Amari in the second flex spot. But I am completely fine going kind of all in on this Buffalo Bills offense, knowing that it's a spot, of course, where you do have to see a ton of dropbacks for Josh Allen if they're going to keep up with Detroit. Now, Amani coming through says Thielen, Cup, and Connor Kyron due to the matchup. You 100% go Cup over Thielen. No question about it. Quarterback, I'm going to go Goff over Tua. I think it's a spot where you actually do have to see a considerable amount of Goff dropbacks. Should be a super high scoring game. I'm going to go with Connor, and then you go Cup down in the flex. But of course, since Cup plays tonight, I would put Cup in there at wide receiver. I'd move Tyreek Hill down to the flex spot just in case anything happens. But yeah, I'm not going to be starting Adam Thielen over Cooper Kupp, even if Thielen has been pretty strong over the past 2 weeks. Oscar, I'm going to get back to this for you, my friend, but definitely let me get to the start set questions before we get to the roster review. Tyler says, I can't decide. We barely made the playoffs, by the way. We are first in points for and points against. Wide receiver, we're looking at Terry, Wilson, Tyreek, and Jennings. It's a full PPR format. So to be honest with you, my guy, I would start these guys over Dowdle. I would go with Terry and Tyreek over Dowdle. Dowdle's been a really strong option, though. I mean, you've had 3 straight games with 20-plus opportunities. Not only have the opportunities been there, but at the same time, you're looking at a situation in which you have a phenomenal matchup against the Carolina Panthers team that's allowing a ton of points to opposing running backs. But a big reason why they've been allowing that many points to opposing running backs is simply they're trailing a lot of games. Opposing teams can run against them consistently. And this may be a little bit of a tougher spot in which you actually do have the Carolina Panthers favored in this game. So it's maybe a little bit tougher to just say, oh, Dowdle is an absolute must-start player. Full BBR format, I'd probably rather have the stud receivers personally. Now, B. Petty coming through. This is playing Hunter Henry with Njoku out, unsure of the receivers. A wide receiver, I would go with Amon-Ra St. Brown in a game in which I actually think you have a considerable amount of Goff pass attempts. Tight end, you said you were going with Hunter Henry instead. And then down here in the flex, I think we're going to take Evans. Evans did miss practice today, so definitely going to be something that you want to continue to monitor. However, if Evans does end up missing the game, then at that point, I think I'd probably want to pivot from Mike Evans to Brian Robinson. Now, Z. Rosen coming through. Looking at this running back room, I think you probably just play it safe. I don't want to say play it safe with Isaac Grindo, but you go with Grindo. We don't know if Walker's going to play or not. Even if Walker does play, we don't know how much Sharp's going to take from him at this point. Going over and looking at what we have at tight ends and the flex, Kittle, very easy play here, of course. Really exciting to see Kittle this week. And then down in the flex, I think you just simply take Jefferson. So let me see if we have anything else now. Really, the question is like, would you want to just roll the dice with Walker, play Tracy? But Tracy's just in an absolute garbage offense in comparison to Grindo. Now, of course, I can't sit here and say, okay, we know Grindo's going to have the same exact role that he did this past week. It is very much up in the air. Now, Ray Charles coming through says, do I risk it bust by Grindo or do we play it safe with Gus or Jaleel? Oh, no, I'd for sure go with Grindo over these other backs. Like, I think you are risking a quote-unquote bust with Grindo because, again, there is a possibility that he isn't actually good to go, and they are instead just, I don't know, throwing him out there because they have no other option. He's going to see 5 touches in this game and just spell Patrick Taylor. Like, the Niners haven't been very transparent with their injuries all season now. But well, what's the upside with Edwards? The dude hasn't scored double-digit fantasy points all year. Okay. Going over to the flex, I think you just go ahead and you take probably Jordan Addison over Harrison. Addison still kind of does look like he's touchdown or bust, but you can say the same exact thing with Marvin Harrison. And then Harrison, of course, has just been, Addison's just been an absolute crusher. Now, moving over to our next question coming out from Slashero. Says, Vikings or Jets DST? I think both defenses are great options this week. Obviously, you have great matchups with both ends. You have the Jets going up against the Jags, who have an 18-point implied team total. You have the Vikings going up against the Bears, who have an 18.5-point total. So I think you can make an argument for either defense. The Vikings defense has just been much better so far this season, so I'd probably go with them. If Bucky plays and Kenneth Walker plays, you go with Zach Charbonnet. If you have no Walker, however, you go with Charbonnet. And then going down to the flex, if Bucky plays, I'd probably go Bucky. But if not, I think you're going with Brian Thomas. But good luck, my friend, and I'm hoping for you that Jamar does nothing this week. And I'm willing to say that even though Jamar is on my team, because obviously we have the bye week here. So that does, honestly, I would feel if Jamar drops another 40 bomb or drops another 50 bomb this week and I have Jamar on bye, I would kind of be upset. Just because I'd be like, okay, well, there's no shot he does that again in week 16 now. So I'm almost selfishly hoping that we do get a little bit of a down week from Jamar. Of course, no injury. But, I mean, if we get a week where, like, Jamar scores 12 fantasy points, has like 12 targets, 5 receptions for 70 receiving yards. I'll be a happy camper. Now, DK Jones coming through says, big week. I need a win to make the playoffs. Can't decide on receivers and flex. Any ideas? Question mark. Well, really appreciate you, my guy. Here we have Cup, AJ Brown, London in. We're really choosing between Higgins and Rachaad White. I wouldn't start Higgins over any of these options. Between Rachaad White and T. Higgins for the flex spot, if Bucky plays, it's very easily going to be T. Higgins. However, if Bucky does miss, I think you can make a strong argument that instead you want to pivot over to White, who should have the majority of the backfield, should have receiving usage. Now, of course, I would expect that you also end up in a spot in which, I don't know, Sean Tucker's involved somewhat, but I don't know how much. So, again, if Bucky plays, you go Higgins easily. If Bucky misses, I think you can go White. Now, John coming through. Here, we need a tight end between Kraft and Cade Otton. Cade Otton obviously has been disappointing since Mike Evans has come back into this offense. You've seen the targets come down dramatically. Kraft, the targets haven't really been there, but the touchdowns are. They are ranked 2 spots apart from each other. I really do think it's almost up to you. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Marvin Harrison in this second flex spot. For me, I would almost rather go Harrison and Smith over Tracy. I would almost want to do anything that I can to get away from Tracy in a really tough matchup here. And again, where the Giants project not only to be the worst offense in the league, and I know I've said this 1,000 times, you are annoyed about this at this point, but just want to hammer it home. The Giants project to be the worst offense in the league by a wide margin. I mean, not even really close. So I would personally like to get away from Tracy if we could. But Devonta Smith, it's a low volume passing attack where he has a tough matchup going up against Pittsburgh. So understandable if you wanted to put Tracy over Smith. Now, Evan coming through says, if no Brees, are we going to go Braylon Allen or Isaiah Davis? I would still go with Braylon Allen, but clearly they would be very close. And honestly, I think it's just kind of the situation where you're annoyed if you have either one. Because if either or the other guy didn't exist, right? So if like Braylon Allen wasn't there to split with Isaiah Davis could easily project behind RB2 and somebody you'd have to start with no Brees. Whereas on the flip side of it, if Isaiah Davis didn't exist, Braylon Allen would project out behind RB2, somebody that you'd very easily have to start with no Brees. But with them eating into each other, does make it where just neither of them are too interesting. And then also, please convince me to go Kincaid over Kraft or Hunter. Thanks. Thank you. With Kincaid, he does get into full practice today, which I do think is very encouraging. He's been practicing for weeks here. And at the same time, with Kincaid, you do have the highest over-under of any game that we've seen this season with 55 points for the Lions-Bills here. So reasonably, I think that you could see just this be an absolute shootout where you want as many pieces in the game as you possibly can get. Now, Hunter Henry, to be fair, has actually seen a considerable amount of targets. I think that Hunter Henry is going to be a very safe play. But Hunter Henry also just simply doesn't have the touchdown upside based off the offense that he is playing in comparison. And then looking at Tucker Kraft, I mean, Kraft is kind of a similar play as Kincaid, where you're just in a good offense. You're not going to see a ton of target volume, but you're hunting a touchdown. But I would just make the argument that you should see more points scored specifically in Buffalo this week than what you're going to have in Green Bay. Now, Joy Boy J, always happy to see us, says, need help at wide receivers in a flex. What are we going to do with London? London, absolutely must-start player regardless. I understand he's been disappointing, but please, nobody get frustrated to the point with London that you go through and bench him. The touchdowns haven't been there, but again, 11 targets a game over the past month. Good projections for this offense this week against the Raiders. You have to start Drake London. And honestly, I don't think there's too much else to it. Down here in the flex, you had no Pollard at practice today. Downs was at practice. Pollard is a really good matchup. If Pollard is going to be good, honestly, F it. I think you just play it safe. Go Isaac Grindo. Obviously, since Grindo plays on Thursday, I think you just throw him in at running back. You move Achane down to the flex. But do you think Underdog even has projections out with Grindo? They have Isaac Grindo higher, lower, 71.5 total yards. So, and they have a Grindo more likely than not score a touchdown. Again, I think there's natural risk with Grindo, and we don't necessarily know how healthy he is and how much of the workload he can reasonably take. But I don't know. In comparing him to those other options, I would personally rather have him. Now, Buster Hyman says running back and flex help. Kincaid is also available at tight ends. A running back, you're going to go ahead. You're going to take James Conner and Isaac Grindo more likely than not. Tight end, I would rather have Kincaid over Hunter Henry. And then down there in the flex spots, I think we're going to take the combo of both Isaiah Pacheco and then Adam Thielen. Brian Thomas is going to be up to you. I think Brian Thomas is the better player. I think Adam Thielen's in the better offense. I have them ranked back-to-back at 26 and 27. I would just say you're for sure playing them over Nick Chubb, and you for sure play Pacheco over one of them. If it was my team, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Brian Thomas, but I wouldn't fault you at all for going Thielen there. Stacy says, projected to lose. Do we throw in Patrick Taylor's at Hail Mary? Hell no. If you have Patrick Taylor in your lineup, get this dude out ASAP. You would way rather start Rachaad White this week. I would rather start Rachaad White even if Bucky ends up playing, but Bucky missed practice today, so that's no guarantee. So yeah, no, I think you leave this lineup as is outside of take out Patrick Taylor, put in Rachaad White, and then in terms of swapping anything else around, for me personally, if you have no Breece Hall, I think I'd also play Braylon Allen over Tucker Kraft. If Breece plays, I would go with Rome Odunze. But yeah, there's almost no instance here either where I decide that I want to go through and I decide that we want to be playing Kraft at the flex. Now, Hellboy Jordan coming through says, just the guy who lost CMC Mason and now Breece. Dear God, my friend. I'm trying to make it post round one of the playoffs. Absolutely brutal. I am sorry to see that. Yeah, so Breece wasn't at practice today. So if Breece plays, we know we want to start Breece and Rachaad White. However, if Breece doesn't play, which looks like it's a very real possibility, I would personally go Braylon Allen in his spot. Wide receiver, A.J. Brown, Adam Thielen, and tight end, we're going to go with Kincaid over Otten. And then down there in the flex, we're going to be going with DJ Moore. But again, really the main thing that's up in the air is if Breece does play. Obviously, we want Breece over Braylon. And let me hook you up with a free start sit question as well, my friend. I really want to see you out here, and hopefully we win next week. Hopefully we win this week. Now, Bonehead says, hey, Mason, at PBR, are we going to go Grindo or Jennings at the flex? I can't see if we're going to swap anything else. So if we're just looking at Isaac Grindo or Juwan Jennings at the flex, full PBR format, I would feel more comfortable going with Jennings. Just you're simply not having to worry about the injury. You have a really good matchup. I mean, you have cemented yourself as the wide receiver one here. Now, of course, with that being said, can I come through and can I say, oh, okay, well, I don't know. Have PBR format. Grindo, if Grindo has the same workload that he had last week and he ends up being healthy, Grindo absolutely crushes here. And Grindo's the easy answer. The issue is it's just very difficult to know if that is going to be the case. So, I don't know. Can everybody spam the chat? Would you rather play Isaac Grindo or Juwan Jennings tonight in a half PPR format? I know for sure in like a full, I don't want to say for sure. I'd say in a full PBR league, I probably lean with Jennings. Half PBR league, I think it's a little bit tough. We have Jennings, Garindo. It's tough. Garindo, Jennings. Yeah. I think Jennings is probably the safer play, but again, if you think that Garindo can get back to what he did last week, you're not too worried about the injury, Garindo's the answer. Elijah Hampton coming through. Running back, we have the Jets guys, Garindo, Walker. I think you just play Isaac Garindo and just play it safe there at RB. And then down here at the flex, Garrett Wilson's for sure who we're going to go with. If Brees plays, you go Brees Hall. If Brees misses, we're going to go with Malik Neighbors. Honestly, there's almost no instance I want to play Kenneth Walker this week. As even if Walker is good to go, I mean, a Charbonnet should have a decent little role. Now, Wilson coming through. Quarterback, we're looking at Goff, Herbert, Baker. I'm going to go with Goff. Again, I think you have a considerable amount of pass attempts in this offense. Running back, we're going to be going with Bijan, Aaron Jones. Wide receiver, we go with Ladd McConkey, Jawan Jennings. And then down here in the flex, I think I'd probably go Isaac Garindo over Malik Neighbors. I guess you have Brian Robinson. Robinson's Pacheco are definitely going to be the safer plays. I think you actually end up benching Garindo tonight, where you don't necessarily have to roll the dice. That Garindo, maybe you end up starting him and he isn't 100%. Now, Guap coming through. Wide receiver, we're looking at Brian Thomas, Myers, Shakir, and Jaden Reed. I think you go ahead and you take Jacoby Myers. While you should have garbage quarterback play, you're also going to have garbage quarterback play in Jacksonville. And you do have a pretty damn good matchup here for Myers. Plus, obviously, you've had the consistent target volume. Going over to the flex, I think you just take Rico Dowdle as the running back that's been safely seeing 20-plus opportunities every week. Now, Precise is up against Jefferson, Kyron, Connor, Kittle, and Terry/Daniels. Any way we can come out with a win. I mean, if the Terry Daniels stack flops, you only need one offense to be bad, and then you have a significant edge over them. Like those stacks, they raise your ceiling, but they also lower floors. Looking at our second flex spot here, it's absolutely brutal. I think, do you end up playing Deebo Samuel? Who else could you go with? Rome Odunze? You can't play Elijah Moore now that you have Cedric Tillman coming in. So really it's like, okay, do you want Rome Odunze or Deebo Samuel? The answer this past week was Rome, but the Niners should be a much better offense, much better matchup. Deebo's been absolutely garbage, but this is a team that's been decimated with injuries, right? I mean, you have no Rice, you have no Hollywood, and you have no Godwin. We don't know if Brees is going to miss yet. I can't tell you to go play Braylon Allen, and then all of a sudden Brees plays. And even if Brees misses, Braylon Allen split in the backfield with another running back here. I almost caught the fruit fly. So I think we go with Deebo Samuel. Don't love it again. I mean, looking at the projections for Deebo this week, they actually do have him higher or lower 72.5 total yards. Actually, I really don't mind the lower than 72.5 total yards. The man has not come close to this for a month. Ayala, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm sorry, we got a fruit fly going through, driving me nuts here. 2-week playoffs where we're down 14. So we're down 14, so we really need to chase the ceiling. We're going to go London at wide receiver. We're going to go with Ertz tight end. And here in the flex, I think we are going to hope that we get the pop with Isaac Garindo. I'm sorry, with Jawan Jennings. This is, again, a half PPR format. Jennings does definitely have a high ceiling. Again, it is a really good matchup going up against the Rams, where you did have 6 total touchdowns for Josh Allen this past week. Now, Macho Man says we need a quarterback between Mahomes and Nix. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Nix. I don't love the spot for Mahomes going up against the Browns. Coming through at wide receiver, we're looking at Jordan Addison, in my mind, kind of being the clear play here alongside Devonta Smith, even if Downs is good to go. And then going over and looking at what we have in the flex, you are just getting consistently 20 plus opportunities a game from Rico Dowdle. So I think you end up going with Dowdle here. Now, Dan Lowe coming through, running back. We're going to be playing it on Garindo tonight. Just go ahead and lock it in because we don't know if either Brees or Bucky are going to end up playing. Looking at the other running back call, plan A is Brees. If Brees doesn't play, plan B is Bucky. If Bucky doesn't play, plan C, I guess you're hitting the waiver wire. Wide receiver, we're going to go with Jerry Jeudy, especially if you have no David Njoku. Tight end, we're going to have Hawkinson. And then down here for that flex spot, for me, I think I'm going to take, if you look at the underdog projections, they would tell you to go with Deebo Samuel. For me, I think it'd be tough to get Deebo in, so I'm probably going to go ahead and take DJ Moore instead. But again, if you look at the projections, they have Deebo ahead of Moore. Just with how bad Deebo's been, I'm scarred, and I can't tell another person to do that. Now, coming through from Rick says, have Patrick Taylor, can't decide on who to flex / wide receiver. Well, there's no way we're starting Patrick Taylor with Garindo good to go. Let me just be very clear here with everybody. I don't know exactly what to expect with the Isaac Garindo workload today. I think he's probably a good play, but 100% I could be wrong in that. What I do know is there is no world in which you are going through and you are deciding to put Patrick Taylor into your starting lineup now. The expectation is Patrick Taylor is a backup running back that potentially gets a little bit of run and potentially makes people who started Garindo regret it. But that's not somebody that you can realistically put into your lineup, though. Now, B. Granite, start 3. We need a receiver and 2 flex between Bucky, Myers, Evans, Cook, Rachaad White, Garindo, Brian Thomas, T. Higgins. Wide receiver, we're going to lock and load Mike Evans. For the first flex spot, we're going to lock and load T. Higgins. And if you think Bucky doesn't play, I would go with Rachaad White. If you're unsure about the Tampa situation, then you can instead just go ahead and play it safe with Garindo tonight, just because you know he is going to be playing, where we can't say the same thing about the other options. But for sure play Evans, for sure play Higgins. And if you wanted to roll the dice that Bucky doesn't play and Rachaad White gets the vast majority of the backfields, you can go ahead and you can plan on going with White, pivoting over to Bucky if Bucky is good to go. But obviously, we just don't have the clarity on that situation just yet. Now, J Laps says, Kendra, Deebo, Reed, Daniels on the bench, any start sets. So I'm assuming you need 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex. So quarterback, we're going to go with Daniels if it's a 4-point passing touchdown format. Burrow if it's a 6-point passing touchdown league. But honestly, you do you. If you want to go Burrow, I'm not going to fault you. Running back, Kamara, Mixon. Wide receiver, we go Chase, Myers. Flex, we're going to go with Rico Dowdle. And tight end, we go Jonnu Smith. So I think we leave it as is in terms of Miller, Deebo, Reed on the bench. The only potential flip in this is if you wanted to flip Daniels and Burrow. But again, Burrow's been much better, but Daniels does have the rushing upside. Now, Oppin coming through, running back. I think we can just pretty easily lock and load Aaron Jones. If Walker doesn't play, you pivot over to Sharp. Wide receiver, we're going to go with Ladd if Ladd is good to go. And then for the flex, if Walker doesn't play, you play Charbonnet. If Walker plays and Breece Hall plays, you go Breece. If Walker plays, Breece Hall misses, then you go with Harrison. But of course, plan A is Charbonnet. Now, Arnick coming through. Wide receiver, we are looking at a DK Metcalf and Jawan Jennings standing out here. I would actually probably play A.J. Brown over Metcalf. However, even if the passing volume hasn't exactly been there in Philly, we're going to play any tight end imaginable over Kyle Pitts for sure. And then we're going to end up getting DK Metcalf down here in the flex regardless. I mean, I understand that Shakir's been better than Metcalf, and it's a really good matchup for Shakir this week. I am just going to be concerned if you have both Keon and Kincaid good to go. Now, Edek, 11-3, and we have a week 15 lock with my opponent losing interest in the season. Do I lock Najee rest of season? So in terms of Najee Harris versus Braylon Allen and Spears, I would say, yeah, you kind of have to. I have Najee on my own team, and Najee has been consistently getting the volume. Of course, a big issue is just simply if the touchdown's not there, he's not going to be great, knowing that you do have the majority of the receiving usage going in the direction of Jaylen Warren. But with that being said, I think you just make sure you're going to lower expectations for Najee Harris this week. Where Najee Harris this week, you are going to have to deal with a really tough matchup for him going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, where you actually do have the Steelers as 5-point dogs and projected to score, I mean, some of the lowest points in the league. So I think Najee's probably a lock here, your RB2 rest of season. Just lower expectations this week. Reed says 2 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 receiver, and a flex. We have Hurts, May, Rodgers, Najee, Achane, Patrick Taylor, Chase, Harrison, Waddle, Reed, Smith. Our 2 quarterbacks, we're going to be going with Hurts and Drake May. May has more rushing upside than Rodgers, similar offenses. Our 2 running backs, we're going to be going with Achane as well as Najee, I guess, but Najee, horrendous matchup again. Wide receiver, we play Chase, Waddle, Harrison. And then for our flex spot, we are going to go ahead. We're going to take Devonta Smith, even though Smith also does have a very tough matchup. And I would try to avoid him where we could. Now, Jalen Hulu has live sports. Always happy to see you. Flex pick, Amari with Allen or Flowers with Reed. Or Flower Reed. Oh, okay, I got you. We're just going to go ahead. We're going to take Zay Flowers. Amari, I do think is in a really good game environment and where you should see a bunch of passing volume. And this does project to be the highest scoring over-under that we have seen all season at this point. But I mean, again, with that being said, it is just very difficult for me to come through and say like, oh, Amari's a must-start option where the dude's been playing like 50 to 60% of the snaps. And at the same time, you have additional competition coming in with the form of Kincaid and Keon. So not a super easy spot to just say, oh yeah, let's go through. Let's start Amari Cooper. I think you probably instead want to just take Flowers. Now, Andrew says, undecided between my receivers. Wide receiver, we know you start Nico. We know we start A.J. Brown. And you got to start Sutton down here in the flex. Unless you do end up getting no Walker, then you can pivot over to Charbonnet. I know Jennings has a great matchup. Jennings is coming off a great week here as well. But, I mean, if you are looking at Nico Collins, top 3 wide receiver, super consistent. I mean, outside of the game, I mean, even in the game where he only played like 15% of the snaps, you're still getting 19.5 points. So, I mean, just one of the most consistent options that you can possibly find. And if you're looking at A.J. Brown, the passing volume hasn't been there in Philly. It is a game environment in which you actually could see them getting forced to throw the ball in the second half, and you could see it being a close game in general. I think this is a squeaky wheel situation. I think a lot of people are maybe overreacting a bit with A.J. Brown, where, of course, I mean, it's very similar to what we had to say for like a month with Tyreek Hill, right? Where it's like, yeah, I understand this guy isn't producing as a round 1 wide receiver should be. But still, based off his role and based off his talent, he is still somebody in your starting lineup every single week. And if you stuck with Tyreek Hill's been giving the 20-point games. I think it's probably a very similar spot with A.J. Brown here. I mean, if you actually look at what you have with the projections for A.J. Brown on Underdog, they do currently have him higher, lower, 80.5 total yards. Let's move this over to our next question coming out from No Punt Intended. Garindo's active. Do we start him, Dowdle, Walker, or Charbonnet? I would go with Dowdle over Garindo at running back. Who do we have at the flex? Yeah, flex, I think you just play Jerry Jeudy. So Garindo, I definitely think if you knew, hey, 100% fact, you're going to have the same workload this week as he had last week. He is the play. Just in comparison to Dowdle, I know Dowdle's going to have a 3-down workload. I can kind of easily say that. And Garindo, there is the outside chance that he isn't fully healthy, and instead they are forced to go through and they are forced to just use him in a committee, maybe with Patrick Taylor. Now, Damian says, how should I pivot if Walker's out? Starting 2 Lions and 2 Seahawks sounds dangerous. I don't know. I don't think so at all, my friend. Quarterback, you for sure go Love over Young. I'm going to go Sutton over Metcalf. Down in the flex, if Walker's out, you go Charbonnet. I can't tell if we have another running back to choose from here. But yeah, if you have no Walker, you go Sharp. If Walker plays, you go Metcalf. But yeah, the last thing I'm worried about is starting 2 Lions. I mean, you can start as many options as possible from the best offense in the league. Again, over under 55 points here in this game against the Bills. I think you just kind of have to get as many of these Lions and as many of these Bills in your lineup as you possibly can. Now, Chief Reefer coming through. Always happy to see you, my guy. Running back, Pacheco, Garindo. Again, I almost just want to say Pacheco, 18 opportunities last week. I want to say take Pacheco. If you look at the Underdog projections, they're so much higher on Isaac Garindo, though. They have him for 10 yards more than Pacheco. Down in the flex, I know for a damn fact we want to go Mike Evans. Really, it just comes down, are you going to go with Isaac Garindo or Isaiah Pacheco? And if you think that you don't have to be worried about the injury with Garindo and you think that he's going to have the same workload as last week, then he is the guy that you go with. Now, let me see something real quick. You know what I need to do? I need to turn off questions on the site because we are not going to be able to get to all these real quick. Sorry, just let me do this. Manage products. Off. Okay. Sorry, we're turning off questions on the site. Hopefully I can get through all these questions right here and then get to some of the questions in the live chat. But definitely that is priority. I don't want anybody sending in questions. They're not going to get answered. Christian says, need help on quarterback and running back. Garindo, White. Okay, so quarterback, we're going to go with Purdy over Goff. I really want to start both quarterbacks if we can, though. I think it's a great week for both. Running back, if you knew that you were going to have no Bucky, I think you go Rashad White. But if you don't have that clarity, you can just go ahead and play Isaac Garindo. And then down here in the flex, yeah, I think you play both these options over DK Metcalf. Now, Nader Nostrom. Playoffs, baby. Happy to see you. Quarterback, we're going to go Herbert over Stroud. Really good matchup against Tampa. Running back, we go with Taylor, seeing every single snap. We're going to go with Kate Otten over Grant. And then down here in the flex spots, I think we're going to be taking the combo of Pacheco. Brian Thomas, Adam Thielen are going to be incredibly close. For me, I go with Brian Thomas, but you do have better projections for the Panthers offense this week. Reed coming through. Quarterback, Jalen Hurts, obviously must-start guy. Running back, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Najee, even though it's a brutal matchup. Wide receiver, we take the combination of Harrison and Waddle. Tight end, we're going to be going with Kincaid, assuming that he is good to go, but he got in the full practice today. And then down here in the flex, we're going to go with Devonta Smith. Now, Crimson says, who do we start out of these plays? Puka, Ladd, Jennings, Adams, Evans, Neighbors. Been stressing me all week. I'd rank them Puka, number 1, Evans, number 2, Ladd, number 3, Adams 4, Jennings 5, Neighbors 6. But Adams and Jennings, I think you can go back and forth. So make sure you're starting Puka for sure. make sure you're starting Mike Evans for sure. And probably in your flex spot, you're throwing in Ladd McConkey if he is good to go. Now, Cody says, playoff round 1, I'm stressing. Quarterback, I'm going to go Bo Nix over Tua. Worse projections in Miami this week than what we're used to. Running back, you go Bucky if he plays. Najee Harris if he doesn't. Wide receiver, we're going to go ahead. We're going to get Garrett Wilson in. And then down in the flex spots, we take Zay Flowers and Jamison Williams. I actually think that this is a sneaky good week for Jamison and a game environment where you probably do see a decent amount of pass attempts. Samel says first round playoff versus the top dog, lots to choose from. Quarterback, I go Baker over Rodgers. Wide receiver, A.J. Brown, still a must-start option, as well as Garrett Wilson is, even if they've been disappointing. Down in the flex, yeah, Bucky, and then the receivers. I think you go Neighbors, and then Bucky if he plays, and if Bucky doesn't, then at that point, I think you pivot over to Jamison, who again is in a spot where we can't see a considerable amount of pass attempts. Now, Ty Chicks got Diggs. Always happy to see you. Really, if we wanted to swap anything, it would be to get either Garindo or Dowdle in. And in full BBR format, I think I start the receiver over him in the flex. And obviously, we can't take out Chase Brown or Devon Achane. I would start Zach Ertz over Kyle Pitts as well, my guy. Joe coming through. Wide receiver, we're going to be looking at Terry McLaurin as just the locked and loaded starter. And then I think down here in the flex, a full PBR format, if you wanted to take Jennings, you can. Honestly, I personally would probably go Garrett Wilson just because the matchup's great against the Jags. Landon coming out. We need to look at the bottom flex spots. If we wanted to get anybody in this lineup, it would be Waddle or Thielen. I would start the running backs over and yeah, I'm not taking out London or Lamb. So I think you leave this as is. I would hate to start Caleb, though. I definitely think you look for a different streamer. And then it looks like you're going to have to look for a different streaming tight end as well because Njoku should miss. Rich Pedro says, weird format with the week 16 playoff start. Need a W. I'm one of 6 teams playing for 3 spots. Quarterback, I think we're going to take Bo Nix. Running back, you lock and load Derrick Henry. Wide receiver, we're going to be going with Waddle, Flowers. You have no Pickens this week. Tight end, obviously, Kittle, phenomenal play. And then you're just going to go ahead and you're going to take Jamison. If Pickens plays, I would take Jamison out in favor of him. But a big thing is, of course, that you are looking at just the game environment where it probably is an absolute shootout there in that offense. Now, Crimson says, who do I start in all scenarios? Looking at running back, if Walker does not play, you go ahead and you take Zach Charbonnet. Bye. Nice to see you. Wide receiver, you're going to go ahead. You're going to take Ladd McConkey as well as Puka Nacua. Actually, no, I'm sorry. You're going to go with Mike Evans. Ladd does have a phenomenal matchup, though. And Ladd did get to practice this week, so it looks like he may be good to go. And honestly, I think you probably plan on going with Ladd down here in the flex. Really strong matchup against Tampa. And he was close to playing this past week as well. Jake says, with Garindo in, play Garindo over JT. Nope, cannot do that. Colts offense going against the Broncos. It's Gary Boss PBR. I completely understand where you're coming from, but for me, I think Jonathan Taylor, where you're going to see literally every single touch in his backfield, absolutely regardless, you just simply have to go through and you just simply have to play him. Like 100% of the backfield, even if it's a tough matchup, you have an implied team total 20 points, so it's not like it's going to be an absolute garbage offense. I'm going over and looking at this flex between Garindo, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. If you wanted to put Garindo in, it would be taking out Waddle. If you wanted to put Garindo in, you would take out Waddle. But full BBR format, I think you can play Waddle if you want. Now, Palsy, Rico, JSN, or Jennings at the flex. For me, I think you probably can just go ahead and in a full PBR format, you can flip a freaking coin. They're so damn close. For me in my rankings this week, I had Juwan Jennings at 15. You had JSN at 21. Dowdle is in a great matchup. Full BBR format, I think you go Jennings, but you could really easily make an argument for Dowdle. Landon coming through. Quarterback, I would really prefer not to start Caleb. I'd rather pivot to a different option there. Over in the running back position, This is tough. Dowdle, you're going to get the 3-down workload. I think you probably end up putting him in the flex. I think you put Garindo in at running back. Tight end, you go Andrews. Wide receiver, you go London. And then down here in the 2 flex spots, I think you can take Rico Dowdle and James Cook. But not super, super excited about James Cook given the game environment. Now, Abid says start Kupp or Evans at wide receiver 2 and Brian Robinson for the flex. Kupp, Evans, wide receiver 2, Brian Robinson for the flex. No, you have to get Jefferson in. So I think you leave this as is. The best option to get in from the bench would be Brian Robinson or Waddle, but I can't put any of them over here. Really, the only potential holes that you have is maybe if you wanted to switch from Tua to Bo Nix, that could be something you look at. Now, Julio says, what running back should we start? Should we keep Higgins at the flex? A running back, I think you go ahead and yeah, you can take Dowdle or Garindo. I think Dowdle gives you the higher floor. Garindo gives you the higher ceiling. But we're going to keep Higgins in the flex, and we're going to go with Hawkinson here at tight end. Can everybody please spam the chat? Would you rather have Garindo or Dowdle? NPS coming through with the super message. For whatever reason, nothing was typed here. So let me hook you up with a free start sit question, my friend. Castillo coming through with the start set says, you didn't answer my flex spots earlier. I'm very sorry about that, my guy. Between Dowdle and Garindo, I do think it is extremely close. I think Dowdle gives you the higher floor. Garindo gives you the higher ceiling. Over here in the flex, I think you're going to be playing Ladd McConkey in a full PPR format, and most likely Rico Dowdle, where you do have a great matchup going up against the Panthers. And again, you have 3 straight games with 20-plus opportunities. Lemon Herbert says, I have Spears if Tony is out, but would Charbonnet be better even if Walker plays? It's close, to be honest. Quarterback, we want to be going with Justin Herbert in our super flex spot in a really good matchup. Running back, I think if you have no Walker, obviously it's Charbonnet, absolute regardless. If Walker plays and Pollard plays, I probably go Pollard. If Walker plays and Pollard misses, I think you may have to go Spears in that instance, specifically because they are going up against Cincinnati. But obviously, Charbonnet is the number 1 plan A. I'm going to hook you up with the free start set question, though, if you wanted to send something in when we have a little more info. Pure coming out. Wide receiver, we are looking at Lamb and Higgins as just absolute locks. And then down here in the flex, I think Chuba Hubbard's going to be an absolute lock as well, where the Panthers are actually favored. And with no Brooks, he should see everything in his backfield. FS TNC coming through. Wide receiver, we're going to go ahead and we are just going to be locking in Mr. Cortland Sutton, who has given you an extremely high floor since the goose egg. Going over to what we have in the flex spots, I think I have to take JT. You have a bunch of great options. Okay, this is an 8-team league, which is understandable. If it is an 8-team league, in that instance, actually, we have Zach Charbonnet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go plan A, Zach Charbonnet. Plan B, we're going to pivot over to Rico Dowdle. But again, main thing is we don't have the word with Walker yet. So I don't feel comfortable telling you to go with anybody on Thursday night. And then all of a sudden, Kenneth Walker ends up missing. And we missed our ability to play Zach Charbonnet, who would have been a very clear, much better play. So we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to bench Garindo tonight to leave open the possibility of playing Charbonnet on Sunday. Now, Anthony says, looking for advice on running backs and receivers. So running backs, I think you're going to be locking and loaded Dowdle and JT. I know JT is in a tough matchup, but the offense should still be much better than what you're going to see in like New York. I'm going over to wide receiver. Lamb as well as Higgins are just the locked and loaded starters. Down in the flex is where things get interesting. I think you play Deebo Samuel and DJ Moore. I know a lot of people are going to prefer Tracy over Deebo, but it's a full PPR format. You do have the Giants projecting to score like 10 fewer points than the Niners this week. And if you are looking at like pick'ems on Underdog at the moment, you actually do have much better projections specifically for Deebo than you are going to have with Tracy. So not a super easy call by any means. It's really going to be Tracy or Deebo Samuel, and it's up to you there, but please make sure you leave the rest of the starting lineup like this. Now, going over to our next question from Laylo says, hey, Mason, need help deciding my wide receiver flex spot. Looking at receiver, Tyreek as well as, Higgins are very easy plays. Ladd, we're probably going to get in as well. I'm going to go with Kincaid over tight end. Flex, I think we plan on Ladd McConkey, full PBR, great matchup. If Ladd doesn't play, we can pivot over to Brian Robinson. But with how good your team is, I don't think you have to take the risk with Garindo, with him potentially being a little bit banged up tonight. Now, Buster Iman Kabither says, thanks for all the help. Appreciate you, my friend. Looking at the squad, I think you go with Zach Charbonnet, regardless of if Kenneth Walker plays or not. I would rather have Charbonnet over Gus Edwards and Jaleel. And then down here in the flex, I think we're going to go with Malik Neighbors, despite it projecting to be by far and away the worst offense in the league. But let me refresh this. L. Creed coming through. And looking at this, we need 2 receivers. I think we're going to go with, we're going to go Evans and A.J. Brown. I don't think you can play Jennings here. Team's too good. I think we're going to go with Zach Charbonnet as plan A if Kenneth Walker were to miss. And plan B will be Cortland Sutton. So Jennings, really good matchup tonight. I'm really expecting that we get a strong performance, but your team's just simply too good to fit them in. So plan A, Charbonnet, plan B, Sutton, obviously dependent on Kenneth Walker. Now, real quick, if you have any questions, please just drop them in the live chat. We turned off questions on the site because wanted to make sure we're going to be able to get to everybody's in time. Oscar, I'm very sorry. Yours is going to be the first one that we get with our next live stream. I just simply don't have the time to do a full-blown team review. We only have 3 minutes. I could look at it for a second, but it's not really going to help you out too much. But yeah, please drop any questions you have in the chat. Mike says, need help. Should we start Pacheco or Isaac Garindo? Projections are saying that Garindo is the better play. I think a lot of it comes down to what is your personal expectation on what the snap rate looks like with the Isaac Garindo injury? Obviously, I have absolutely no idea. I'm kind of surprised Garindo is playing with the injury just 4 days ago, but I don't know. There could be 2 different outcomes. Garindo could come out and have the same exact workload that he did last week. And if that is the case, Isaac Garindo is by far and away the best play here, but also Isaac Garindo could be banged up more than they're leading on. And then if that's the case, Isaac Garindo is a horrendous play. Voltron says JT or Garindo. JT is a must-start running back. JT is going to see every single snap, every single touch in his backfield. Do you play JT? Okay. JT or Dowdle? I'm going to go JT. Thin Blue Line says, no help this week, Mason. Got the #1 bye. Salute, my friend. Congrats. User says Lamb or Addison. For all my best ball teams, I really hope Addison outscores Lamb, but the answer is Lamb. EA Thunder says Garindo or Jennings. Full PBR format, I think you're going to go ahead and you're going to be taking Jennings. Non-PPR league, I think it is going to be up to you. But I think that's it. Game should be kicking off. Again, I have the bye in my league, so really the main thing I'm going to be looking at will be my underdog teams tonight. And this is about the time of the year where we can actually start narrowing in and rooting for specific underdog teams. It'll be a lot easier next week when obviously they're narrowed down much more than they are now. But again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Wishing the best of luck, and hopefully I get to see you in the live stream after the game tonight.